We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is P-Car Talk.
You know, U.S. production car,
Yeah.
and it just feels so good. It plays well. It's got 195 tires on all four corners,
Okay.
so it's nimble.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see these images where the wide body is so attractive, but that definitely adds a little bit of you got to add some muscle in there for steering it. So this is a great car to dance on the back roads. It's a great car to go out for a date in.
Yeah.
I think those mid-year air-cooled cars have been kind of an afterthought, whereas now they're kind of coming into their own and they're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring the mid-years up because I think for a long, long time that was the kind of people would scoff at them or roll their eyes at a mid-year and they would, oh, well, of all the cars at the 911s, I that's the one I don't want, right? And then now people, and the people who do own them, they love them. I think they're great. They have their own little cult too, right? Like the mid-year guys are kind of like always like, hey, well, no one liked these forever, and
yeah,
we do like
great
them.
great value,
Yeah.
and that
they're light
2.7
cars,
feels
too.
good.
They're light.
They're light, you know, and if you love, you know, the narrow body, I guess you could still call that the narrow body. They really drive well, and they're a lot of value. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of value in those, and they do need a few things. We moved to a more blades on the fan, so we removed the production 77, which was I think maybe 6 blades, and went to the 11 or 12.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's pretty common.
From a cooling standpoint. And there's some things that are done like chain tensioners and pop-off valves that can enhance the experience of owning that.
Uh-huh.
But it's great. I mean, it's really cool.
So from your perspective, you spent a lot of time in the mountains, and you said that car is really good in the mountains. So if somebody was shopping a mid-year car or even just a Targa in general, they're not going to be lacking for something. That car has plenty of power for the mountains, right? And has a stiff enough chassis for the mountains, right? Yeah.
You know, the Targa is a little bit less expensive now than a coupe, and the Cabriolet is even less expensive than the Targa.
Uh-huh.
So there's value there, but the Targa still has the Targa bar that adds stiffness to the chassis and drives fantastic. So a little bit less money, open air. It's very capable. Mm-hmm. Whether you're a 3-liter, 3.2, or 2.7, they're a blast.
So there you go. You heard it from Sir Charles. There's
Targas.
Grab a Targa.
Shop a Targa, man.
You know, buy a Targa for your wife, because if you're a dude that loves cars, you're always looking for a reason to add one. Buy her one.
Yeah.
Her one.
Yeah,
and
I think we
one.
know a common guy. It's shopping one for his wife right now.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I was just at his house, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna want this thing. And I was selling him the romance behind. Not that he needed to be sold, but I told him why I actually want one. I could see, like, you know, with your significant other, you know, when it's nice out, you pop it off, and you know, if you like wine, maybe go to a winery and just pop around, do a little couple tastings, you know, in the mountains or something, and have that, or just go grab a breakfast somewhere and have the top off and go cruise, and it's capable, and it's not a dog. It's still quick, and it's still nimble, like you said, and it's fun, and it's playful, and all of the positive words behind it, and it's still a Porsche, right? So
yeah, it's great. And you know, nowadays it's an alternative asset. So if you have, you know, a balance statement, you're going to get more smiles out of driving this
100%.
Targa than ever looking at your financial statement.
Yeah, just looking at digital
you know,
numbers
so
or
just
something.
Snag something. I'll show you some pictures after this, but I drove it yesterday to the grocery store.
Uh-huh.
So I had it's stacked full of groceries in the back seats laying flat, and it was just awesome. You know, it's like, okay, I'm only going to be out 10 minutes, but I took the Targa, and it was a good time.
Yeah. So, okay, you're a vintage car guy. You're a lot like me. I love vintage cars, but I do own a modern car. Have you ever thought about adding to your arsenal? I know, like, by proximity, or maybe because you were brokering a car, or maybe you owned it for a little bit, and you were selling it. But do you ever, for you personally, think you're ever going to own a water-cooled car? And if so, which one do you think you would put in your arsenal?
I would definitely own one. You know, I kind of wish I'd have bought something like every single person watching this is like, oh, yeah, he wishes he bought one 2 years ago.
Yeah. Join the club, buddy.
Right. And you know, it would be a blast to grab like a 997.2 or a good deal on a 996, something like that, just to enjoy and have, you know, all the modern amenities.
Air conditioner, i.e.
And also maybe jump in a different drive or a different rally or something. But I could see myself snagging something. You know, what would I get? I really leaned into a 996 turbo for a while and thinking, man, there's a lot of money that these cars are amazing, and it's such a great value.
A lot of bang for your buck,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Even still to this day,
still
even
to
in
this
this
day.
market.
Yeah. I mean, they're more than they have been, but they're still undervalued.
I mean, let's be honest. That was a $130,000 car MSRP back in 02, 03. So I mean, what is that money now? Like probably like that was 180 money then.
Yeah. I mean, that's a supercar.
Yeah,
it's a
it is.
supercar that you could go get your groceries in.
Yeah.
It's like an Acura NSX. It's dependable.
Exactly.
It's robust. It's a supercar, but it's
and it's built to last. That's
Yeah.
another thing too. Is there's people that have driven them 300 something thousand miles without cracking the motor open and what have you. And I think the unique thing about that, like the turbo that you mentioned, I think when I drove one for the first time, I think I might have drove my buddy's Chad. I think he has a 03. And I just drove that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And that was the first time I ever driven a 996 turbo. And I got in that car and I go, this is 03 power?
Yeah.
Like this must have been a space shuttle in 2003. Yeah. Like there probably was nothing out there that anybody could hold a candle to that thing. Not even not saying because you're out there drag racing, but I'm just saying from a driver's perspective, from an enthusiast feel, when you go drive that car, you must have been like, what is this? Like they're selling this to people?
Yeah, and you can do such little things that boost the horsepower. Not that it needs any boost.
I agree.
But there are people that are like, oh yeah, I've done this, and now it's at
it's got
600. Now it's at 700.
Yeah.
And those are some people chasing numbers, but
exactly.
That's a great car. What air-cooled car would I snag? Gosh, it's hard to say. It'd be fun to grab something like that though. But I'm a fan of them for sure. Especially if we were going to do an extended drive for some of those creature comforts.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of things too, because I feel I'm glad to hear you say that. I already knew that about you, but I think the listeners needed to hear you say that, because I think everybody looks at maybe Charles Stanley, doesn't know Charles Stanley that well, and just says, okay, he's a vintage car guy only, and that's all he has, because he wants to do vintage watches, he wants to this and all that kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is we like all stuff. We just gravitate towards other things more than others, but that doesn't mean you don't like it.
Right.
So
yeah, and like the vintage cars, I guess it's almost like you're tricking yourself, because there are hardly any taxes, so it's cheap ownership, but then again, no taxes, but there might be more expensive repair bill.
It's like the heftier bill on the backside of it, right?
And they don't depreciate the vintage stuff, so that's
and they're not
always
making any more of them. Like we talked about that today too, right?
But
there's no more of that.
But
I think on the flip side of it, it's just kind of interesting. I dabble between both of those areas, vintage. If I had to say, if I could only ever pick one to drive the rest of my life, it would be a vintage 911. So I always say that a lot on the podcast. I'm like, if you could only ever have one toy, we're fortunate for us because we breathe, live, eat it, whatever, in whatever paths we've all crossed, we've been able to own more than one or what have you. So we have selection. But I always say, if I only had one, it definitely would be an air-cooled. Do you feel the same way about that? Like, if you could only ever own one 911, it would be a vintage one? Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I just think the experience you get in that vintage 911, it's just so rewarding driving it. Even like walking out of the movie theater and you just kind of look over and you see your car in the parking lot. Yeah. Like the car, my main driver, which is a 1985 backdate. Some people may think it's a real long hood 73. It's a backdate. But if I were going to build a car today, it would be that exact car, the same color. And for me, that's rare because I love what's next. So I feel so good in that car, and I want that car, and I own it. I'm super excited. Like, that's the car for me. Yes, I wish it had great air conditioning.
Yeah, of course.
But
those are just like nice to haves, right? Not need to haves.
Yeah, and what's cool too is if you think about, maybe you don't drive as much June, July, and August, so that's really only 3 months. Yeah, and other than that, you can enjoy an air-cooled car with a very primitive air conditioning system or none for the other 9 months. Yeah, I mean, in the 964, I can charge it and it'll work for while it's charged, but it'll leak all the Freon out eventually. So most of the time, I just don't drive it when it's super hot. Yeah. And, it's coming into rally season, as I call it, or just driving season, air-cooled season with it. And I feel the same with my 964. I have the car that I want because I went and hunted it down, and I did the build that I want with it. And you have the right car because if you've owned it for 7-8 years, you still look at it and you're like, man, I still love that car. Yeah, I agree. And 100%. I get in that car, and every time I get in that car, I'm like, yes. Yeah, totally. There's not and I know there's a lot of car guys that listen, and they're kind of like ready to own something for a year and ready to kick it down the road and get into something new.
But I've never felt that way about that car, and I'm sure you don't ever feel that way about your car either.
And it's great to have that, and it's easy to think about what's next. You know, whether it's like a bright pair of sneakers or like a watch. I always love what's next, especially with social media. You see what everyone else has, and you want what they have.
You're like, I want that.
Yeah, and you're like, that's awesome. Should I change my wheels? But I'm excited that I still love the car I have. I love to drive it. I feel so good in it, and yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people like that. You know, everyone that comes to the rally, it's like a tuned guitar. They're like, I know this car, and I know what it can do and what it can't do.
Yeah.
Let's go play.
And I think that's a cool thing about your rally, too, because it has all different genres of an air-cooled, where you can think of, where you can literally go down the list and pretty much try to category stop. You have, you know, a stock car. You have something it's, you know, enthusiast. You have something sport tuned or what have you. You have an full outlaw cars. You have all types of stuff, and I think you have, you know, race specific builds even hang out and show up, and I think that's another unique thing, and I think it's a real treat for everybody who does attend, who participates too, because it's almost kind of like a Porsche frat house in a way, because you have all these different personalities and you have all these different cars in the sense that all show up, and it's candy for everybody else that's there too, even if that's not your thing to do a sports purpose build. But you see a couple, and you get a couple
next time.
Well, maybe you get an idea, right? Like you're like, man, actually, I really like my car, so I'm not going to get rid of my car, but the next build I do
is going to be.
I want to do one of those.
Check it out.
Yeah, and then you don't even know that person, but then it opens that door. You're like, hey, how does that thing drive? And they're like, oh man, it's this.
It's
and
the
that.
best.
Yeah.
Like, oh, show me the engine. What'd you do for suspension? Oh, well, it was a dog when I had this, and I did this instead. So you're getting tips right there to almost kind of cut to the chase instead of oh man, I made this mistake by doing this. Don't do that.
Correct. Yeah.
So.
And what's also cool is, you know, half the time the dude will throw you the keys.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, it's like, hey, hop in here. Let's go down 226.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And you kind of feel it and you're like, whoa. So, you know,
then
the
they're like,
neat,
hammer it.
Yeah,
like, okay.
yeah.
I thought I was.
I mean, you know, at the one we had in the spring, the individual that showed up with the 73 RS.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He you know, asked me 3 or 4 times, go drive it. I didn't have a chance, but it's so neat. And
You're
that's
like, I'm
one
not
thing.
insured for that, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm like, whoa, dude. But that's what's super cool is you get to see these cars, you get to see them in motion, then you get to chat with the owner, and then you get to run either behind it or in front of it. So it's just such a different experience than, say, you know, Cars and Coffee or a Concours.
Yeah.
Static displays.
Yeah.
I think that's, at least for me, over time, I always kind of been that way, but I don't mind, and this is not a knock on static display stuff. It's not a knock on a Cars and Coffee. It's not a knock on all those things, but when I go to those events, I'm really actually not there to look at the cars. I'm there to like speak to people that are there, like 100%, my friends.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Because I can see the car, but I can also see the picture of it. You know, if it's not running, driving, and it's all dolled up, that's fine and that's great, and I know that ticks a lot of people's boxes and that gets them going, but that absolutely does nothing for me. I'd rather grab a group of guys that are friends and even have way lesser cool cars that were not Concours level cars sitting on a garage floor, golf course floor, and let's go ripping some cars that have a ton of patina on them and just go have fun. I'd rather look at your car than like, oh man, look at your fender flares, dude. Like, how many rallies have you been? I was like, man, I've been driving this car like 13 years like this, and there's zero paint on the fenders because it's just rock blasted, which is so cool. And, you know, to each their own. There's a lot of people being like, that looks like crap. And I'm like, man, that looks awesome.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And you know, I think Cars and Coffee is a great gateway. Mm-hmm. I really feel like a lot of the individuals that you chat with, like when you chat with someone at a Cars and Coffee and then you kind of, they're like, hey, this is my car. You get an understanding of them. And then the next thing you know is you now have that micro group for local runs.
You're right.
So even though you may be passionate about driving, you can really use Cars and Coffee or some of these gatherings to kind of form your tribe.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a great bringing together. But I think a phrase that I've said is I'm more about back roads and rock chips than golf courses and Q-tips.
Yeah.
But
Of course, I'm so glad you said something like that. Like, that's so Charles Stanley of you. Like, I was like, thank you for
I'm definitely
that.
And you know, I'm like you. I go to the gatherings because I really want to visit my friends from Miami. Mm-hmm. I want to see, you just get to network so much there, and it's energy, and you get to kick the year off at Amelia and go dine. So I really go for the peers to some of those places. And you do see amazing cars, and
Yeah,
you
and
know.
it's not to take anything away from them. I'm just saying it's not my cup of joe to do that. Like, it's more of like when I go there, like, I'm not saying I don't enjoy the cars, but I spend a lot less time walking around and seeing everything, because I always get people we run into, and I'm sure you deal with this when you go to Amelia or any of those events, and like, oh, hey, did you go see that over there? And I'm like, man, I haven't. I'm talking to everybody. I kind of want to talk to right now, but yeah, I'll try to make my way over there, like, you know, one of those kind of deals, and I end up never making my way, because you know how it is. Like, you go 5 feet and you get, you know, you're talking to somebody else. You go 5 feet and you're talking to somebody else, and before it, you know, you've gone 100 feet, but the day's over.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And you haven't gone very far, but it's a good problem in a way. But again, that's the reason why we're there, right? We're not there to maybe per se like walk around and peruse all of these cars. And I feel like maybe because, and where I'm going with this, it has a point. So like, do you think maybe because we drive enough, I don't want to say so much, enough, and we experience those things, and we figured out that's what our passion is, and some of the people that maybe haven't even discovered that passion yet, that are going to the alternative people that we haven't even met, they're walking around at these static displays that get jazzed up about it, taking pictures about that. Maybe it's an undiscovered love that they haven't been in the mountains yet. They haven't driven their carrier. So they don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? They don't know what they're missing because they've never participated.
Correct. I 100% agree. And you know, if you're gravitating towards an air-cooled 911 or you know, some of this vintage stuff, it in motion is what everything is all about.
Absolutely.
And just the sensations. I mean, I want to tell people like, hey, remember when you were 14 and you won the regional like soccer championships, or like you won a state title in football? That's what you feel like after a run at Targa, Carolina, and you're high-fiving with the guys and gals there, and you have chill bumps, and you are smiling ear to ear. That's kind of what it's like. It's like summer camp times 10, but you're an adult, and you're playing with these toys, and it's amazing.
That's a great analogy, because we all know someone like this, or we are those people who did this, who played maybe some type of sport in high school or college or what have you, and you're maybe 40 years old, maybe 50 years old, and you're still telling those college stories. Well, that's what like driving in the mountains on some of these rallies are with your friends, because, and I know you experience that, you still share those war stories weeks, months, years after those run groups were like, hey, remember Targa 19?
Like, dude,
when you were going around that bend and that dog ran out and then was like stood there and like tough talked you, and then we all went by, and like, that's kind of what this is in a way. You're still telling those war stories after that event, and that high lingers. And then with your run group, you'll be texting them or on that group text and be like, man, I was just thinking about you the other day, fist pumping out the window when we were going by. And I think it's that adrenaline and that camaraderie and all that stuff, it binds you together. And the same reason why, if you're listening and you played baseball or football or wrestled or whatever, and you did all those things and you won, and hey, remember when we wrestled Chamberlain and then it was like came down the wire, and we went nuts,
100%.
Like, and you live those memories over and over again because there was so much emotion, there was so much strength and stuff shared. And I think that's why a lot of the guys and girls that go on this thing are still, you're almost found that other element of like how you had that maybe when you were younger, and doing that camaraderie, teamwork type stuff, and now you're like high-fiving with your team.
I definitely agree. It's definitely a good group. So
so get out there and drive. If you even if you're not at an official rally, get a couple buds and just go out there and blast in the mountains. You guys will probably bond over that medal so good, and you guys will become better friends, or girls will become better friends for just going out there and going and ripping together, right? Because I know there's so many people that you go out and you spend time with, and you're like, man, I didn't know anything about you, but like we went and drove for the weekend together, and like, I really like you. Like, do we just become best friends? Yeah.
Step brothers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just go out and watch the leaves change, and you know, really, you don't have to be a ripper. I mean, you can, we have a bunch of different run groups, and the people that are just out there enjoying those roads, and like I was talking about how good the 2.7 is, just spending time with that in the mountains behind the wheel, it's provides so much feedback and so much enjoyment. So you're going to find your crew, and whether it's the horsepower of the car, the how long you've owned it and your skill level, or just, man, this is a killer weekend, I want to see some leaves change. We've got that.
So let's dive a little bit. Obviously, we won't get too personal, but with your family life, you have some kids, right? So I think I met your son, I think at Amelia with John Oates, right?
Oh, yeah.
When we all like hung out, and I think he signed something your son had.
He did. Yeah. We brought an album. What's cool is Ray Schaefer, who's been to Targa, a buddy of ours. He mentioned John was going to be at Amelia, and I've invited John through Ray to the Targa, but I think he had tour conflicts or something. But my youngest son Oliver's really into music, and so he brought an album cover, and John signed it, and it was super cool. So that was neat. Having the family down there.
So obviously you brought your son there, but he's into music. Does he enjoy the Porsche scene? How does he feel about that kind of stuff?
So I've got 3 kids, 2 in college. I have a oldest boy named Henry, middle Matilda, and youngest Oliver, and I'm definitely their dad. So like their friends might be like, dude, your dad's cool because of this. To me, I'm their dad. Yeah. So I think like I raced bikes pro. None of them are racing bikes.
So it's more of kind of like whatever dad's into, we're not really into. I think
there might be some of that, and maybe that'll come around. My daughter, I did teach her to drive manual, and she drove, we have an old Land Rover Defender. She drove that to high school a couple times, and then people were like, that's cool.
Exactly.
And so she's like, hey, someone said it was cool.
Yeah. She's like, you think I don't really like it.
Yeah. And maybe it'll come around and they'll like want to get into it. They do love the looks, and they always comment like, I love that green, or this is my favorite one you've had, Dad. But I need to get them out there, driving and have them hit
I just
rallies.
wondered if, because it's always curious to me. I don't have children, so some kids take to it like a duck on water, and other ones have a different maturation process where they're kind of like, well, I didn't really like it for a real long time, and then I turned 25 and I couldn't get enough of it, or something like that.
I think that might be that with my kids. I mean, we love watching movies together and going out to eat and some travel. But as far as the Porsche and cycling and like watches, they're not like super jazzed.
Exactly.
I mean, they always comment. They're like, oh, that's my favorite. Yeah. But they're not like, let's go drive, Dad. Let's go drive.
Yep, there goes Dad again.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know your wife's into it, right? Like she likes it.
She is into it, and it was neat to get her. She loves the Targa. And she's kind of developing that, and then
let's give her a shout out too, because she's like an unsung hero of Targa all these years, like supporting you and helping and doing all this stuff like behind the scenes, running around, like being there at lunchtime, doing all the, I guess the best way to say it is the unsexy stuff, right?
Yeah,
like that, the stuff.
But she makes it sexy, super sexy.
Well, because, she's your sexy. That's why.
Exactly.
So that's different. But I'm saying, as far as that, like she does a lot of the important things, I think, to make things seamless, right, for Targa, that people maybe don't see or take for granted. Because I know there's some people know the depths of you that are closer to you, like I am, and a few others. They realize what your wife does there, and she has a very, very large role there. But she's doing a lot of it behind the scenes. Right?
Yeah, she's behind the scenes, and she's always, bouncing ideas. I'll give you guys a sneak peek of the graphic this year, which is super cool.
I'm excited.
So that stuff's into production.
Yeah, I just want to say a big shout out to her publicly. I know she doesn't need that, but I think she deserves that.
Yeah, Chrissy Stanley, and she does art, C. Stanley Art.
Exactly.
But
talented artist.
Talented, great,
very,
great
very
gal.
talented.
And, high school sweetheart.
Yeah, I know that.
We met in high school.
Like, I think you posted a picture, I want to say maybe this past year or the year before, of like you guys in high school or something like that together. I think it might have been for an anniversary
or something like
for
that.
an anniversary. You're
like,
yeah, can you believe it? We've been in this. I was like, man, what's she doing?
It's a long time.
She messed up messing with you.
Yeah,
after
exactly.
That, huh? You got your hooks in her, and that was it after that, huh? You're just like, I know I got a good one. I don't want to mess this up. I'm going to be with you forever. And she's like, but I don't know if I want forever with you.
Right. Yeah. So I'm lucky to have her, and it's been great. And, we're tag teaming and,
you guys
crushing
are a great
some stuff.
Too.
So it's good.
You guys are a really, really good team, and I can appreciate that, because you could see that when she's there too. Like, you guys just have a good time with it all. So
she's been a blast, and always good feedback, and I think she's going to have the Targa there this year.
I know.
So we'll hopefully get her out on some back roads and have fun.
Okay, so now that makes me think of this thing. Like, I haven't been in, like, and you probably know better than I do, because once you get into your silos in your run group, I know there are women who come out, but most of them, I believe, are passengers. Is she going to be the first woman, like, actual driver in a run group? Like, officially?
Well, we have a female, Pamela, signed up from Chicago, who's rolling her 356.
This year, though,
She'll be coming this year.
Okay, but I'm saying prior to this, there hasn't been.
Correct. There hasn't been.
So there might be 2 this year, right?
Right. There hasn't been a female driver Not that we're
I think I know
choosing
Pamela
not
too.
to.
No, I know. I think I know Pamela. I've met her a couple times. I think I met her at Amelia. I think we met her in California.
She's going to have a male co-driver, which is even
Nice.
cooler.
That's even badass.
You know, it's
I
like-
think I met her at Rensport, actually. She drove that. I think she drove that 356 all the way out to California.
I would believe it.
And
Yeah.
I think she had an issue, and I think John Benton helped her, like, after hours fix, like, a throttle cable on that thing. Is it silver?
It is.
I think it's
silver.
her. It's definitely
So
her.
I met her in West Virginia,
Yeah.
and she signed up. And
She travels with that car, man.
She does.
She drove it to California and back.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So it's super cool.
Yeah, she's a legend.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about like it'd be neat to have a ladies run group.
Yeah.
Because you know the nice thing is it's driving and ladies crush it.
Yeah.
So you know
I'm excited that integration is good. Like you said, it wasn't like purposeful. Like it just kind of happened that way. But I think it's exciting. Like went without, and then maybe you're gonna have two actually. Like one for sure, and then you know if Chrissy listens, I'm sure she will eventually.
She'll come out.
We got to force her now. Like
right, get her. And you know it'd be neat to have more ladies show up, and so I think there are a lot of lady drivers, but I think they. Right now tend to lean more into say the modern stuff like a Boxster or a 912 or
exactly.
So you know, but also that's where they can whet their appetite and then as a second car snag something older and come out and
that'd be great.
You know, have a blast with it.
Maybe have like a ladies run group like you said. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And there's such a great ladies Porsche community.
There is.
West Coast, East Coast, down in Miami.
Yeah, like so Porsche Women's Global. There's
women in Porsche.
Yeah, women in Porsche.
There's a
there's
classy cat
community.
Maria out in California. A little shout out to Maria.
Yeah.
It's great getting them out to rip.
Sweet, man. Do you have anything else for?
No, I had a couple things. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, get on it.
Just about your road development for the tours. Like, how do you go about choosing roads? Do you already have an idea of what you're looking for?
You know, I mean, there's a time that I want to have us out on the road, pre-lunch, post-lunch, and then a lot of the roads I really rely on some of my connections and community. So you know, someone might be like we did that event in Roanoke. So I knew some of those roads, and then a good buddy of mine who's also a cyclist and a Porsche fan, he helped develop some of those routes. So I think local talent's always great to utilize for when you're putting together an event like that. But I have a bit of a formula where I'm like, okay, if we're going to have a driver's meeting and we're going to get on the road and there's these run groups and I want to finish by X for lunch, I really want people to finish the day excited but not burned out. And that's kind of a fine line because I've done some events where they're like, yeah, dude, we did 450 miles today. And we got that patch for our jacket, but I was like, man, I'm cashed out.
Yeah, you got the merit badge, and it's just like
right, like I want to go home.
Yeah, my skin is raw, man.
I want to finish up so that night you can't wait to jump in your car for tomorrow and not feel a little bit on the burn side. You know, be fresh for the dinner, be fresh for the evening conversation, and then get in the car the next day ready to rip.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I just wondered.
So that's a formula I have. But yeah, and the roads are so important. The roads, I feel like it's really important, and I think our roads are a bit taxing. You know, I remember last year, I think we did less than 100 miles before lunch. But it was like
Everyone
2.5.
was like,
it was like 2.5 hours because you are working. Bring a second shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, we were doing the twisties.
It was nonstop.
Yeah, but on paper you're like, what? Like really? But it was they're tight, twisty, twisty roads.
That's cool. I just wondered for my own planning.
Yeah,
No,
I mean that's
good.
a great question because it is challenging. I mean, we could elaborate a little bit on that as far as putting that roadmap together and doing all that stuff. And I like one of your, for people, a lot of people, because we have a lot of listeners, for people that aren't going to ever go on the drive or maybe not get a chance for a long time. Charles always says, hey, if you get lost, you're welcome. You don't owe me more money because you got to drive a little bit more today. Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. At the driver's meeting, I always say like, hey, it's better to be lost in the mountains than to be found at home.
Exactly.
And it's like, if you get lost, like think about your cell phone, think about everything. When's the last time you were lost?
Yeah.
Like you didn't know, oh man, where am I going to go? And then also I'll pull you in and be like, hey, Aaron, what do you think? Did we miss this? And then you look at the thing. So it's not planned, but it can be team building. And also if you get lost, we really dial in those routes. I've driven everything with a co-driver, so you have the exact mileage before you turn left or right and the name of the road, and it's consecutive, so you shouldn't get lost, but everyone gets excited, and you can get lost
And it's okay if you do too, because sometimes even if your run group, your leader, it's happened to us many times.
Oh yeah.
And actually, if you're driving as hard as you should be driving up there, sometimes when you do get lost and you're kind of all pulled over, it's actually a welcome break, because you're like, oh my God, I needed that.
Let's regroup.
You're shaking the hands out because you're just like, whew.
Yeah, definitely.
You're like, oh, thank God we're lost. Okay, maybe about 5 minutes we'll figure out where we're going. You're like, okay, we're just going to calm down a little bit here.
Stretch the legs, take some pictures. But yeah, for sure. That was a good question. Hit me with another one.
My
Come
other
on.
one was your 85 backdate.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was backdated. So
You didn't?
Was it
We're going
backdated
to edit
before?
that out. Let's edit that out. It's not. It's a 72.
No, that's actually a real
It's
one.
a 72.
Yeah.
It's for sale.
Yeah.
No.
I was just curious.
Magnesium case.
Did you backdate it, or was it that way when you got it?
So the story on that car is the same place that I bought the Eurovan from that had me service. It kind of sat in a spot of his shop. When I met him, it was sitting there, and it was a shell. So it was backdated, solid white, with no glass, no seats, no interior. The transmission wasn't hooked up, the wrong tires, no fuel tank, like nothing was there, but it was
Project
backdated.
car.
Yeah.
So, and I'd be like, hey, what's the story there? And he's like, it's not for sale. And it wasn't his.
Yeah, typical old timer fashion.
Yeah, but after I think, like a year or a year and a half, or maybe more than that, of just kind of encouragement, he's like, yeah, he said he'd sell it. I was like, all right, I'll buy it. So I bought it and put the center fill fuel tank in it, and luckily it was backdated properly with a G50. So it's that rare 3.285 with a G50. It's full Frankenstein, but done right.
The great transmission in it.
Yeah. So it's got a great transmission.
Yeah.
It's a Euro rebuilt 3.2, so it's a little peppy.
Yeah.
A lot of things in there like that I did, the seats and the interior and the center fill tank, and it's got just Fuchs painted black and a fun exhaust. But it's a great car. But it's a fun backdate.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean that car. I think over time, if you set a car up for, if it's not ever changing, like maybe little changes are fine, but if you finish a car and you keep it for a long time, and I'm sure you can relate to this because you have a lot of friends like this too, where maybe you're in a conversation, yes, you know their name, but it's eluding you for that minute. But if somebody says like, oh, he's got this car, he's got, it's an 85, it's got an orange hood on it, a ducktail. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, because that's, I don't know what it
car.
is. Like our reptile brains will,
Right.
we remember the cars, it's just kind of, we just don't remember exactly. And I feel like your car, and I've known you for a while, but I see you, and it's weird. The best way I can describe it for people to understand or listen, when I see your name, like there's like maybe a bio or something next to it. It's like I see your face, and then I see that car right next to your face. Like, like a picture of that car. It's like, burp, burp. Like, and I'm sure people see me, and then they see the 964. It's like, burp, burp.
Yeah,
like, it's like
identifiable.
it's like,
and yeah, it's nowadays, people might not even know your name, but they know like, what's your Instagram? Like, curly hair 76. Oh,
Exactly.
you're Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
So people know me as C Stan Man, and really like, this video, I'm always have my cap on, and they can see, I'm thinning up top. So that's sun protection and style.
That's what Big Car Talk brings to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You get the real rawness, right?
Overexposed, but
Yeah.
so many people nowadays with Instagram names, you really don't even know, like, oh, what's that guy's name? I know on Instagram he's Burley 36.
Or the guys that are fortunate like to have multiple cars, and then you see them at Targa and they're in a different car every time. You're like, I can't keep track of you. Like, all your cars are awesome.
Right.
I don't know.
They show up every year with a new one.
I was like, you got 6 awesome cars, and like, I guess you're just going to keep doing this to us, and we don't know what's going to keep showing up.
Yeah, there's some cool ones that show up, and it's neat to people to bust out something from their quiver. And,
Well, the great thing about that too is I think, and it's not even and so don't anybody that's listening, don't take this the wrong way. It's not a competition. But I think it's a camaraderie thing. And how you get a bunch of guys together or girls, and everybody, and you're comfortable enough with each other, so you trust each other, and maybe there's some secretiveness of what shows up to the event. And maybe Charles knows because he's like leading the event, but nobody else knows. And then like some secret iron shows up, and they're like, boom. They're like, I had no idea you were doing an ST build, and it's like, I've got one, and everybody's like, oh my god,
yeah.
That
Then
shows
hearing
up,
it and
at
seeing
Targa
it.
or something, and you're like, dude, what? And then then the icing on top is the guy goes and rips it and gets rock chips all over it, and that's just for me.
Yeah.
That just makes it so much better instead of being like, all right, back in the trailer,
Right. Debut, and then
You've seen it.
hide
yeah.
it.
Oh, you got to see it like back in the trailer.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
totally,
that's the good stuff.
totally good with that for sure.
That's about it. That's all. That's all my questions.
Come on, man. Come on. Bring the beard. Bring the beard out and let's fling another.
So, what else are you chasing? I mean, I know you're always looking for cars. Is there anything you haven't got yet?
Right now there's a 356 that I had wanted to go look at last week, and it's kind of on hold. It's a private party sale, and a 993 that I actually should have called the gentleman on the way down here, but I'm always. I'm a normal dude, self-made guy. So like writing a check for any of this, I feel it, I just grew up normal and all the stuff that, I'm acquiring is through, work and saving and smart decisions. So it's tough sometimes writing a check on some of the current values that are on the market, and you remember when, and it's always tough. So there's two that I'm looking at, but like, it's just hard to write that check for the 993 that I want.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. That, I mean, just even if you're super recent to the game, you've seen the escalation of Porsche pricing, especially in the vintage market in general, and not even 993. You could say, and this isn't a knock on anybody who owns an SC, but just say, hey, you've got maybe a bone stock SC, and it's just looked after. It's got some miles on it or anything, but I mean, that's a 50+ K car now, and that wasn't the case not that long ago, actually. Even prior to the 13 jump when we had like rewind past that, let's just say, all right, let's go 10 years. In 2011, you could probably pick one of those up for like 18 grand, no problem. And that's unfortunately not even close to that anymore.
And it's been a huge jump in 1 year. Mm-hmm. Is that because everybody's portfolio is jumped with the market, and so I'm not traveling at all, I'm going to buy tangible objects like a Peloton or a 911 or a vacation house. Everything's inflated right now. Will there be will things settle? Like bicycles are hard to come by, watches are expensive, cars are expensive, so maybe some things will retract, but we'll just kind of have to watch and see.
A friend of mine brought it, and not to get deep on this topic, but he another element of why maybe just in general everything's up, even like housing, all that kind of stuff, back to what you were saying. Maybe these people had all these like strong financial portfolios that had all this digital money that was living out there, and they didn't really have any tangible objects. Maybe during the COVID year, they realized how frail life possibly could be, and it kind of maybe motivated a lot of them to maybe go chase some of those tangible objects that they've always wanted.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And what's neat about, say, an air-cooled tangible object is it's a tangible object that can provide you an exceptional experience. Mm-hmm. So, if you buy the Dream Patek Philippe, it's on your wrist. Yeah. And that's it. And it's amazing. Yeah. And then you can build the community around you and show up, and people are like, man, let me check that out. That's impressive. If you snag the SC, now that's your gateway to unlimited miles, mountains. So it's a community, but it's an adventure. It's a time machine. It's so it does provide something else.
It's a people mover. It's taking you places. It's taking you to other scenery. It's taking you to different things. It's transportation on top of fun, and it really is a really good vessel to, like you said, to all of those things.
Yeah. So it's super cool. Analog, these old cool cars. You've heard it before. It's always more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
And I think there is a lot of the guys and girls in that area, they cross-pollinate, because when we joked around, like Chris, for example, that's hosting us here, we joke around, he's like, oh, you went full Porsche, right? Like, because his whole fleet now, even from his daily drivers and his fun cars and all that good stuff, are all Porsche. A lot of us have gone that way with our fleet, and some people it's just a matter of time when it ends up happening, because at some point you just get so infused where you're just kind of like, man, I don't want to drive anything else.
Yeah, it feels great, and I think, as I mentioned before, the first rally that I did wasn't Porsche specific, but the driving experience and the dependability, the robustness of the air cooled cars. I mean, they just did it right. You don't have to tinker on them like you do some other marks that are whether it's an Italian or a British sports car, which look amazing and provide their own experience. But I'm not a mechanic, so I love to get in the air cooled, flat six. It's dependable, it's simple, and enjoy it. Change the oil, put some rubber on it. That's it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with it. The simplicity of it makes it a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's not that we have to talk the listeners into it, but I know there are a lot of listeners that long for a air-cooled or some sort of 911, what's water-cooled. And I'm sure these shows, I hope, help put you over the edge because, you know, being part of that community is I would say second to none as far in the car world. I know everybody else has their own community, whether it's JDM or whatever exotic, Italian exotic, but I really feel like Porsche people travel well together.
I agree. Yeah. And you know, I mean, such a diverse background that comes together and ages. I mean, we've got, you know, guys that are in their late 60s, guys that are in their late 30s, and everybody's just, you know, having a blast and it's coming together and just building community. So it's good.
Like Magnus always says, right? It's you speak the common language of Porsche. And I think once you're there, you kind of get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Doesn't take much.
Yeah.
And then you're bit.
Right. Yeah. No doubt.
Sweet, man. Well, thanks, Sir Charles Stanley.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Really enjoyed you guys hosting me. Thanks for allowing me to be on.
I know, like, long story short, like there was, I think Charles and I joke about this because we see each other so often throughout the year, and we've been trying to do this podcast. I want to say for a better of 2 years probably now.
Yeah, we almost hit something in Miami. You know, buttoning up something and you know, or the tail end or the front end of an event. So
it always kind of happens that way. So I feel really honored. Finally, we were able to do that. So it's the point of that is it's the long game. So if you're hunting a car, don't give up, right? So we were trying to get Charles on the show for a long time. We knew we weren't going to not stop being friends. Yeah. We knew we were eventually going to be able to link up and be in the same place together. And finally, here it is. You guys get to listen to the show and enjoy the show, and we're happy. And make sure you check out the Rotor Supply and, you know, reach out to Charles if you want to ever get on those rallies and start becoming buddies with him.
Yeah,
you know?
DM Mike.
Yeah, exactly. You're just going to get a delete if you do that, right? Yeah, maybe send Charles like a funky hat or something so you can like get into
cover up this thinning.
Yeah, like get into his buddy world and be like, you know, shower him with gifts and all this. Like,
exactly. no doubt.
But in all seriousness, thanks again for coming on the show and taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks at Targa, Carolina. When this wraps up, I'll show you the graphic for this year.
I'm excited.
Cool. So, all right, super psyched.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you guys on the next one.
All right, take it easy.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of P-Car Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at P-Car Talk or online at pcartalk.com.